Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do a review on this Phoenix Models P40 Warhawk. It's not going to be like anybody else's reviews where they show it in the box, put it together real fast, take it out to the field, fly it, come back and give you a review on it. The way this one's going to be a little different is there's going to be no build, no assembly video, and the plane has been flying for a season. I can't even count how many flights on it. I've run it through its paces, and what I want to do is give you a review of a plane that's still being sold and is battle tested, just to see how this fares out compared to perhaps other models that you're comparing. So I'll come back after the intro and we'll get started. As I was saying, the plane has been flown for a whole season. It has its defects now, and anything that was about to happen has happened in a big way. But let me give you an overview on the aesthetics of the plane. Let's start with the front end. You can see right off the bat that the color of the cowl does not match the green. And no matter how you try to put this cowling on, the lines don't match on either side. So if you buy one, don't expect that the colors to match up or to even look the same. It just isn't there. The covering itself overall was really good, nice and tight. It came with a couple of little wrinkles on it. There wasn't any wrinkles on the wings, none on the tail section or the stabilizer, horizontal stab, rudders, ailerons. They were all tight. And a matter of fact, I haven't even tightened up the model since this summer. And the only places that I did get some wrinkling was right in here and right across this green on the top of the hatch. But other than that, you know, it occurred on both sides. But other than that, it stayed pretty tight. Very impressed. Let's see, what else can I tell you? The decals. It comes with a great sheet of decals. You get the stars and a whole bunch of these little tiny decals that you see. It's a nice decal sheet. You have to put on the stars yourself on all these little things and the tail number, things like that. But overall, not too bad. The exhaust stacks are ABS plastic. You have to epoxy those on. I found that to be a little more difficult than what I would expect because the plastic didn't want to flex, and you have to hold the piece on there till the epoxy dries, whether it's with tape or with your hand. But other than that, not too bad. I had a problem with this side staying in place. The other side went pretty well, but this one for some reason didn't want to stay. It kind of misbehaved for a while, and I ended up having to wrap masking tape around the cowl using 30-minute epoxy, and it was no fun, but in about 2 hours it was ready to go. Alright, what else can I tell you about it here? I have a choke. It's right here. See if I can pop it open from this side. I don't know if you can see that. And that is a straight rod hooked to a 90-degree bell crank going straight up to the carburetor choke lever. Nothing fancy, just simple and out of the way, semi-hidden. And all it is a straight rod with a 256 nut soldered to it. And that's about it for that. The fairings here are screwed onto the bottom of the wing, so you have access to your retracts. And when I flip it over, you'll see that a little better. You have to install this little antenna. And, oh, by the way, it is wintertime. The furnace kicks on, and you're probably hearing it start up, so try to ignore that. The hatch, pretty easy to get on and off. Lines up pretty well. And let me get into something that was not good. Okay, Last year at an air show, my son was holding on to the back of the plane like this right here, holding on to it while I'm firing it up, choked the motor, and gave it a flip, and I flipped it again, the engine kicked back, and my kid grabbed a little tight onto the stab, and this thing busted off right here. I don't know if you can see that seam, and under the stabilizer below the mounting plate through the internal framework, which is plywood, and snapped that thing right off. I mean, the horizontal stab and the vertical stabilizer broke clean away from the airplane. I don't know if that was just something that was wrong with this particular model, or is it something that is in every model? I don't know. But that was a nasty rebuild, a repair job, because once that broke, the plywood splintered, and it was really tough to get back flat and straight. But after a lot of sawing and hacking and thinking of new words to say, I got that thing back on there. The covering that I used to cover up the damage was actually scrap from the wheel well, because you have to put the wheel wells in on this thing, and I saved these pieces just in case I had a hole to patch, and I'm glad I did, because I had to put a great big chunk of it right up here and down below to cover up the seam that I had to make. But that was about the only bad thing I found about it. Another kind of ugly thing that I think of this plane when I look at it and makes me giggle a little bit is the pilot is painted with a green helmet, which it should be a leather brown, and the face is kind of a yellowish green. It looks like a Martian. I know it's neither here nor there, but it's the aesthetics of the plane, and there's no way to get to it to fix it or repaint it unless you rip the canopy off, and I don't know what kind of damage that will do. Coming down from the canopy, the seam is hidden where the plastic meets the hatch. It's covered with a piece of tape. It's green here, and it turns to silver back in this direction. After a season of flying, this tape has cracked right on the edge of where the canopy meets the hatch. It's kind of unsightly. There's nothing you can do about it. I plan on peeling it off and replacing it, but I haven't done it yet. I don't know if I will do it until the canopy comes loose, and when it comes loose, I can pop it all apart and repaint the pilot. That's my idea. I don't want to do some refurbishing and then have to go back and rip it off and start over again. So that pretty much takes care of the canopy area. The hatch is actually really nice. It's nice and heavy. It's well built. I've dropped it on the floor of the basement, which is concrete, maybe 3 or 4 times. It hasn't broke, it didn't dent. I might have just gotten lucky, but pretty happy with that. And one thing that did happen over the summer, and I don't know if you can see it, but in the wood behind the canopy glass here on the side, there's a crack stemming from the edge right here all the way back to here. It's where the wood dried out and split. Nothing I can do about it. It's not hurting the structure of the model, so I'm not going to mess with it. It's just going to have to be there until I take the canopy off and redo that. Oh, what else can I tell you about it? Shock absorbing tail wheel. Pretty nice. The bottom part is plastic. This part up here is also plastic. And the block below that holds it together, and the dog bone down here are aluminum. The control rods are straight hard rod, metal rod running inside of a nye rod going back to the elevator surfaces. The rudder control is done with cable for the rudder itself and the steerable tail wheel, which is up inside, and when I flip it over, there's a hatch down here that you can see all of that. Let me see, what else? Oh, yeah, this is something I changed and actually added, that if you get a model, you're gonna say, where's that decal? And that would be, let me come around to the side here, see if I don't get hung up. that would be this right here. That stencil right there is actually made from, let me see, where did I put it? Behind me. It's made by this stuff right here. This is a product from Headline. It's small rub-on lettering, and what I did is I put all this jargon on the side that the original P40 had when I looked it up on the net and found a P40 close-up of the nose, and it has all these stats like project numbers and fuels it uses and technical orders. And what I did amongst the lines, on the top, below the top line is my FAA number, and below that is some other writing that's normally there, and below that on the third line, see the fourth line would be my AMA number, and it's all hidden within that. So the guys here in the States who have to have AMA numbers and FAA numbers on the side of your plane and scale, that's one way to hide it, is like that. At least that's what I found. Maybe there's a better way, but another thing that they say is it has to be accessible. The FAA number has to be accessible either in or on the plane, but if it's in the plane, it has to be accessible without tools, the use of tools. So since this is spring-loaded, you can put it on the inside of the hatch and call it good. Okay, let me spin this around. Oh, one more thing, let's get this out of the way. It does come with a dummy drop tank. Actually, on a P40, it wasn't a drop tank at the time. This screws on from the inside down into the tank itself, holds it up on the bottom. And one thing that's missing on it are the two stabilizer bars that come off both sides of the tank that give it an authentic look, and it doesn't have that. I left mine off for two reasons. One is that there's a lot of drag and this weighs quite a bit. I'm kind of surprised for a piece of foam. And well, maybe it's plastic. Either way, it's added weight, more drag, less fun is what it comes down to. Unless you like the looks of it and want to fly with it on there, that works too. I have no problems with that. It's whatever you like to do. And almost forgot. The eyeball right up here. That does not come with the kit. It comes with this eyeball. This eye doesn't look aggressive enough to me, so I decided to paint my own and give it a little bit more meaner look, I think. Maybe it doesn't, I don't know. But I painted it on with Class Coat paint, made a stencil, masked it off, drew it out, cut it, and it's 3 layers of paint, black, white, and more of an off-white and red. And that's just something I did. I like putting a little personal touch on it. Oh, on the stencil here and on the stickers, what I did was put a real light coat, actually 2 light coats of clear Class Coat epoxy paint over top of it so they don't peel up. The Class Coat paint over top of the stenciling is necessary because of the fuel. If it gets on there, it'll smear them. So what I do is I just put a little Class Coat paint over top, keeps it good. Never had a problem with it afterwards on any of my planes for that matter, once it's sprayed over with epoxy paint. All right, I'm going to spin this around and talk a little bit more about it. On the front of the wings, you'll notice the little guns. Let me get my pointer stick here, a little piece of plastic right up here. Those have to be mounted into the wing and glued on both sides. Not a big deal. The hinges on the ailerons are a pin hinge, which are really nice. You glue those in and glue your ailerons on. And on the back here they give you CA hinges. I don't like them, but I ran out of my regular Dubro hinges, so I ended up having to use CA hinges on the elevator, and there's pin hinges on the rudder. That makes it pretty nice. The pin hinges I think are better, way better than the CA hinges. CA hinges, I always had a problem with them cracking after maybe a season or two, and before you know it, you got a flutter and you don't know where it's coming from, and I've always find that my CA hinges have cracked. So that's that. Just personal preference thing. On the opposite side over here, I'll pop the hatch off, I can show you. You can see that it has kill markings of German aircraft here. And those are not what come with the kit. The one that comes with the kit, where are they? They were right here. I misplaced them. Oh, here we go. They look like that. They don't look like what I have on there. These are basically a stenciled S turned sideways, okay? They just don't look right. And if I hold it up here, you can see the difference between the two. These came off of a 1/5 scale Top Flight P-51 Mustang that I built a while back. But I didn't use them. I did only use one line on them, and that was it. So much for the decal part. Put this guy back on here. What I should do now, I'm not going to talk about the retracts yet. I think we'll go to the inside before I flip it over. So I'm going to reposition everything so you can see on the inside of the model and see how things are laid out in there. It's kind of messy, but that's just me. You can make them nice and tidy if you want. But let me take the hatch off, position the camera, all that fun stuff. Be back with you in a second. Obviously, we're looking at the fuel tank here. Right here is the edge of the hatch. You probably can't see it, but you can see my pointers going straight down. That's the edge of the hatch. This is the first bulkhead in front of the hatch. And you have the fuel tank. I'm not really sure what the CC is. I never bothered to look. But that's what that is, a tank. Over here is my throttle servo. I use a straight rod, straight metal rod with an easy connector here. It goes right straight to the carburetor, hooked to a standard JR servo. Nothing. It's a digital standard servo, and nothing fancy there. This octopus down here is flap, Y harness, aileron Y harness. They're not tucked in like they usually are, but that's what those are. And up here, as far back as you can see, is my ignition indicator light. Let me turn on my transmitter, turn the receiver on, and external kill switch, and you can see it lights up here. And in the hatch itself, I have a hole I drilled up through the bottom where I can see this LED when the ignition is on. You probably see it in the video. It looks like it's lighting up yellow, but in real life, it is red. It's just the way the LEDs are filmed. Okay, I'm going to move back a little bit and show you the air retract system that they give you. Ignition light is just in front of the view of the camera, so you won't be able to see that. But what they give you is some Festo fittings. They give you the blue airlines, and this one is the down service supply line and the up. This is the air valve they give you. It's not the best in the world. It likes to stick. I don't know why. I've greased it and it still sticks. It only sticks when you use it for the very first time. So when I use it, I move it by hand, make sure it's loose, and then it'll move by a servo all day long. I have no idea why it does that, but it does. I suspect that the sleeve is dry, but I don't know how it can be with all the white grease I got up in there, but it does. Okay, right here is the Airfield Line. It's just a regular tire style valve that if you have a hand pump for your tire on your car or lawn tractor, it will screw right down on this and you can use it for your air. Over here I have a pressure indicator, which is reading 0 right now since I don't have any air in the system. Receiver, you can see it's still on. Little glowing light. Shut that off, save my battery. And my servos. They are red servos. You are probably wondering what they are. Some of you might be familiar with them. They're old multiplex jumbo, what they call jumbo digital servos. This is a power servo and this one's a power servo. This one's a jumbo, I believe. Take a look here. Yeah, these two are power servos. This one's a jumbo. They're all basically the same. I can't find much difference in the specs. They're a little bit oversized. They're a lot slower than a standard digital servo, like a high-tech 645 MGs. But they serve the purpose. They were just sitting around. I've had them for years and never used them. They were new in the box, so I figured, why not throw them in this P40, make them work for a living. They give you all the connectors, and they supply the hard rod for the elevators. They supply the cable for the rudder and elevator, or the rudder and the steerable tail wheel. These connectors here I added myself. These are off of a Great Plains Mustang that I didn't use. And what else can I tell you that's inside here? Not a whole lot in this area. You can see how lightly they built the construction on this. Lightning holes everywhere. Not my favorite thing to see on a model, especially in plywood, especially the cheap plywood that they use. They need all the strength they can get, but they lighten them up. You can see right here. And there's tons on the side where there's no framework at all. That kind of irritates me a little bit because the strength isn't there. You're basically flying a eggshell framework with an eggshell skin over top. It's that delicate. I mean, it doesn't feel it when you touch it and squeeze it, but it is. It's not as sturdy as, let's say, a Top Flight P51 giant scale Mustang kit, the wood kit. That is way stronger than what this ARP is, and it weighs more too. I believe a bigger plane that weighs a little bit more flies better in the wind than a model that weighs less, that's big. So something to keep in mind. Okay, I'm going to flip it around. There's one more thing to show you inside, and then we'll go to the bottom. All right, last thing to show you. Right here, you just barely see red. Those are the connectors going to the servos. But what I want to show you is back here. This is the tank. They give you the air tank. This is the service supply line that goes to the center of the air valve. And that's tacked in with some silicone. Nothing special there. It fits nice and tight. But that is the last thing in the fuselage. And you can see all of the lightning holes that, for me, just don't cut it. Such as these right here. Unnecessary. Here and here. It just makes the airframe too light, in my opinion, to take any kind of abuse. But they want it to take little abuse, so you buy more of them. So let me flip it over and I'll show you the undercarriage and pretty much wrap this thing up. Here's a shot of the undercarriage, and I've flown this off of grass pretty much all summer long. You can tell I've flown it off of pavement because the wheels are scuffed, but look at these guys. They're about whipped from flying off of grass. So I recommend that if you're going to fly off of grass, go ahead and invest in some better retracts. Robart makes a good retracts. It's almost a shame to have to put a $300 set of retracts into an inexpensive plane such as this, but it might be worth your while in the long run. Okay, what else can I tell you here? Let me operate these retracts for you. There you go, that's how they work. The retraction cycle is a lot slower when it's sitting right side up, so it looks a little more authentic and less like a pattern plane from the 70s. And what can I point out to you here? The flaps right here, goes right there. Let me activate the flaps. You can see that these are pin hinges that are set up in a V to get the flaps to work. Kind of an ugly thing, but it works, so I can't complain too much. Like I said, this plane was only to fill a void in my squadron that I got. The hatches are out of view, I think. Let me see, flap hatch is here where the servo is, and out a little further is the ailerons. I don't think you can, well, maybe you can see them. Oh yeah, you can see the ailerons moving, but I think it's out of the frame where the servos are. No big deal there. The bottom part of the cowling, you can see is getting all cracked and chipped and stuff, and that's from storage and moving it around. It's not from nosing over. I have never nosed this airplane over yet, and I've landed on some pretty rough grass with this thing in different fields. So if you're worried about nosing over, I don't think you're gonna have a problem as long as you do a decent flare, don't come in too hot, and try to always shoot for a 3-point landing like any fighter aircraft. 3-point landings are the best way to land your bird. Okay, I think that is just about it here. I'm going to flip it back. Actually, I'm going to flip it around, get a better view at the tail wheel. All right, you can see the tail wheel much better like this, I guess. It's just a foam rubber wheel, nothing fancy. And it's also sloppy, but the slop is not from the gear itself, it's from the mount that's inside. Let me pop this baby open. That's the hatch. And you really can't see what's going on in here, but you have the cables here for the rudder. There's a nice metal yoke that is connected to the wire strut that runs through. There's several hex style stop, what would you call them? Set screws, I'm sorry. Lost for words for a second. Set screws here that you can use for adjustment, whatever you need to do. But it's just a nylon block, like a nose wheel on any sport model tricycle gear airplane. But it's almost like they used a standard size, American standard size nose wheel block for the wire and a metric size wire going through it, and I think that's what's causing the slop. But it's nothing to worry about. Slopping the tail wheel on this plane doesn't seem to affect it in the least bit. So that is pretty much all I can tell you there. It's a very easy thing to install. The latch pins like this are already pre-installed. You don't have to worry about that. All right, I'm going to flip it over. There's one thing I should have mentioned while I was upside down, is that underneath the cowling here, there's a chin in the very front of the fuselage, and it's very soft, so don't use your stand and set it on there, otherwise it will collapse and break. The underside of the fuselage itself is fairly sturdy, but still on the soft side right behind that underneath the wing. So be careful when you're setting it down. The weight of the plane with the engine and everything installed is a little bit much for it to handle, so be careful there. And if you decide to put the stand on the cowling, make sure it's on the flat part of the cowling where it's open a little bit, because that seems to be the sturdiest part to set the plane down on. Okay, overall, great airplane. Love to fly it. It's a lot of fun. Snap rolls, loops, 4-point rolls. They all go pretty well with this plane. I've done spins. When I first flew it after my maiden flight and got it all squared away and trimmed out, I literally went up and tried to rip the wings off or tried to make something break, and it just did not. It was a lot of fun. It replaced my giant Super Sportster I used to fly for air shows, and it's a better looking airplane, I have to admit, compared to the Super Sportster, but I think the Super Sportster has an all-around more fun ability to it versus this. But this is a World War II model. It's a semi-scale. One thing I should let you know, where to go, is the manual is very good. It's easy to go through. Not a lot of words, a lot of pictures, but it's very self-explanatory. Everybody probably has noticed on some of the ads it says it's quarter scale, but it is not. After measuring it out, I wanted to see exactly what it was, and it comes out to 1/5.572 scale. So a little bit smaller than 1/5. They say on here for the wingspan is 80.3 inches, length is 70.7 inches, weight is supposed to be 14.5 to 16 pounds, 6,600 grams or 7,500 grams, however, whichever way you'd like to measure your weight. The landing gear, metal, CNC, air, spring-loaded struts, foam tires. I mentioned that, I'm pretty sure. When I pressurize my air tank for the retracts, I use a Robart, just a standard Robart pump. Mine has a gauge on it. I run it up to about 80 psi to 100 psi. I also have a tire, 12-volt tire pump that I use also, which I normally use because the hand pump is a little laborious. Engine's 30 to 35 cc. I have a 35 DLE. I was going to put a Quadra 35 on there, but it had been too much monkeying around to get it set up to fit in that cowl properly, so I decided just to go out and buy a 35 DLE. Let's see. On the front here, it has all kinds of settings for the throw and expos and stuff. I used the throw settings, but I didn't use any expo, because that's just not the way I fly. I like using my sticks and mixing myself as far as when I'm flying. Overall, like I said, great flying airplane. I wouldn't hesitate to buy another one, even though I'm not an ARF guy. It's a good one to have in the hangar to go out and have fun with and look like a real airplane. So that pretty much wraps it up for the P40. I wanted to just kind of add in here that the Cougar build is still coming along. Don't worry that it hasn't come out in a while, but it's in the process, along with a few other planes that I got going at the same time. The sanding's almost done. It's about ready for its last coat of prime, and when that's sanded out, I'll do the video on the painting, show you how to make the stars and bars, the chevrons, lettering, that sort of thing. That will make it a little kind of interesting. And the painting part, you can carry on to pretty much any airplane you want to build, any scale model. It'll give you an idea how to do chevrons, stencil letters, and things like that. How to tape off your canopy type of thing. How to make panel lines. I'll go over panel lines on that too. So I guess that's going to be it for now. And I'll be back with probably more of these little segment videos on different things. Maybe, I don't know, maybe a review of some kind or a unboxing of something, who knows. So until next time, have a good one.